So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to yet another editor, John Lawn, the editor and associate publisher for Food Management Magazine, who has pulled together a panel of directors who are going to talk about healthy eating and college dining from the perspective of the directors. So please welcome John Lawn.
Paul's taller than I am. Yeah, wait till you get up here. I have cartoons to start. I'm trying to eat more locals. See? Mom wants you to know where your food comes from. This is my favorite cartoon in the food arena. It started out with lactose, but now he's intolerant of everything. And that's pork, the meat of the pig. It makes an excellent substitute for tofu. I'll have the vegan. Fat-free, sir, straight from the gym. And I'll just leave this up for a minute. You can read it. I'm the editor of Food Management, and before I get started, let me just give some credit to Paul, because I watched Paul moderate this for the last 3 days, and he's done a great job. So why don't you give a hand to Paul King? You know, our goal with this panel was to share some of the experiences from different parts of the country and different kinds of schools. Everyone is striving to, address the need, demand, mission of healthy dining in one way or another. So if you've got some thoughts as we go through some of these presentations, please jot them down. We're going to have a Q&A period at the end, and I think we'd all benefit from sharing points of view and questions if you have some. I guess one of the things that I thought about and getting ready for it is healthy dining is a very ambiguous term that's like sustainable in a way like that. It doesn't have a real clear definition. It means different things to different people, much like that proverbial story of the 5 blind men and the elephant, and the one feels the trunk and thinks he's got a snake, and the other guy leans against the leg and thinks it's a palm tree trunk, and so on. Healthy dining programs are a lot like that. Is it something for someone who's trying to manage their weight or lose weight? Is it for vegans and vegetarians? It's about a very specific type of ingredient mix. For athletes, it's about high protein loads. For people that want to follow the guidelines of the Healthier Americans guidelines. We just had a reissue of that last year, and now we have the My Plate symbol, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about. If you're trying to meet that, it's more of a traditional dietitian's approach to a balanced meal at every meal. And for some it's philosophical. You have religious leanings. You have people that want to eat halal or kosher, whether it's part of their religion or they think it's healthier. A lot of people think kosher food is healthier than regular food, and it has nothing to do with the healthfulness of the food. Chef Carrie Neff coined the term conscious cuisine to describe the idea that he promotes the idea of a mindful approach to eating, where you're making conscious decisions of eating the right things in order to lead a healthful lifestyle. And the other side of it is you see stories about, let's have stealth health, where we don't call attention to the healthfulness of the food. You don't want to think about it, but we're going to sort of feed it to them anyway. And, frankly, that works sometimes in a college campus. You call attention to the healthfulness of food. Sometimes it does turn some people off. They just don't perceive it as being necessarily going to have the flavor that they expect. Beyond those issues, when you manage a program on a college campus, there's issues that relate to just running the programs. You've got to meet the expectations of parents, administrators, students from all these different sort of points of view, and also still food costs and production, and what's it going to do to the labor if you have to do it this way instead of that way. It's a tremendous challenge to design programs and to integrate them with your regular dining programs, which are very diverse to start with. So what we're going to talk about today is 4 different directors here. I'm going to introduce them here. We have David Riddle. He's the Executive Director, University Dining at Texas A&M University. We have Nancy Lewandowski. She's the Dining Director at Iowa State University. Eric Montella. He's the Executive Director of Stanford Dining. and David May, he's Assistant Vice President of Business Affairs at the University of New Hampshire, and of course formerly the dining director there for many years. Right, David?
That's correct.
I mean, you can fool you with that business affairs thing, you know. I mean, yeah. So the way we're going to do this today is they're each going to give you a short presentation so you get a sense of where they're coming from, because their dining programs and their healthful dining programs are all different. And then I'm going to facilitate a conversation. We try to get them to engage with one another and give you a sense of how they agree and disagree, perhaps, or at least elaborate on each other's points of view. And then we'll open it up to you guys. So with that, let me ask David Riddle to come up.
Wait, we've got a card.
Wait, we've got something. This is funny. Close this. We had a little technical issue here, and open this. Our ideas about what's healthful. Some things have changed, and some things haven't changed at all over the years.
Hey, new Kellogg's Okays. Note the improvement? They put a bear on the box, which improved it so much, they decided to improve the cereal, too.
Oh, come on, Yogi. Let's be serious about Kellogg's new Okays, okay?
Like the Space Bears say, very okay.
Well, first, how nutritious are Kellogg's new Okays? Well, they're made from oats. And of all grains, oats are the richest in proteins and rich in other bodybuilding essentials, too. In fact, some people consider it their duty to eat oats. Yogi. But now, with a really delicious oat cereal like Kellogg's Okays around, people can have their oats and enjoy them too. Especially Kellogg's new Okays. For Kellogg's new Okays are crispier, cripsier, and toastier, and therefore tastier than ever. So for the best in oats, get Kellogg's new Okays.
The one with the bear on the box. Suitable for Freeman.
Just to remind you that the cereal wars were there 60 years ago, and the production values weren't. And now David Riddle. Okay.
Great, thank you. Thanks, John, for the trip down memory lane. And thanks, chefs, for being here. We're going to give you a quick introduction to Texas A&M, and then talk a little bit about some of our strategies. Also going to share some statistics regarding health in the U.S. So a little bit about Texas A&M. We're the oldest public school of higher education in Texas. 5,200-acre campus, about 51,000 students enrolled. We have a Corps of Cadets program, and we run a separate dining hall for our Corps. And we've got about over 10,000 students on a voluntary dining plan. We serve about 17,000 meals a day, and my department operates dining halls, all the retail food, catering, some training tables, a bakery, a commissary, and a faculty club. So I want to share some statistics. I had the good fortune of participating in a childhood health conference hosted by the Culinary Institute of America and National Restaurant Association in San Antonio last month. And Dr. David Ludwig from the Children's Hospital in Boston gave some statistics, and I think what it did for me is it reconfirmed nutrition isn't a fad, it's not something that's optional anymore. We have to address these issues, and we've got a kind of a ethical responsibility to do it, and we're in a great position. So some of the statistics that really reconfirmed why we focus on nutrition and health at A&M are right here. So you can see from 1960 to 62, the percentages of obesity based on the current definition for body mass index. 15% of the female population and 10% of the male population in the U.S. 40 years later, the percentage of obesity in women has doubled, and sadly the percentage of obesity in men has tripled in 40 years, and this trend seems to be holding steady. So we've got a serious issue that we need to address. In addition to the health perspective, there's an economic impact. So the direct costs for treating obesity among U.S. adults is $168 billion annually, or 16% of our total spending on medical care. And then this is the one that's the most disturbing, I think, is by 2020, more than 50% of the U.S. population could have diabetes or prediabetes, with annual costs approaching $500 billion. And again, these stats are taken from Dr. Ludwig's presentation last month at the Culinary Institute in San Antonio, their new campus. Lastly, by 2030, total annual economic costs for cardiovascular disease could exceed $1 trillion. So these are what we're facing. These are the challenges that we're facing, and so we've developed some strategies at A&M, and we've got some good news too. We can actually change some of these statistics, hopefully. So an optimally nutritious diet combined with regular exercise and not smoking, as hard as that may be, we can reduce 80% of the heart disease, 90% of type 2 diabetes, and 70% of stroke, as well as other chronic diseases. And the best news still, or better news still, is that chefs have the knowledge to make optimally nutritious actually taste good. And that's really what this conference is focused on, and why conferences like this, I think, really help advance our role in combating some of these national health trends that are very disturbing. And we've got the opportunity here to influence behavior. Childhood obesity rates are really, I'm not going to show those statistics. I focused on adults, but they're staggering in the K through 12 population. And so what we have is an opportunity to take folks who are eating on their own, making their own choices for the first time in their lives, and hopefully steer them in the right direction. So we've got 6 strategies that we use at A&M. We've established nutritional guidelines, and this helps in the working relationship between our dietitian, our registered dietitian, and our chefs. So we're very upfront with kind of what we expect and what we need our chefs to do, so that when they plan menus, they know what we're looking for, and we don't have to go back and backtrack and rewrite them and redo them. So, and then we give specific targets for sodium, sugar, fat, and carbohydrates. We communicate complete nutritional information. This is in the form of at the point of purchase or at the point of choice. We've got nutritional information. In addition, we're developing a database to put all this information online. We want to increase variety of fruits and vegetables, and we have some target measurements for doing that, particularly in our dining halls. And also increase proteins, particularly fish, nuts, and beans are important for us. And we emphasize healthy carbohydrates to try to steer some folks away from sugars and high fructose corn syrup, and then also really trying to focus on offering standard portion sizes. So those are the strategies that we're currently employing. And I've got a simple idea that worked for us. We decided to mix in at one of our dining halls, mix in whole and cut fresh fruit in with the desserts, so there's not 2 sections anymore. We used to keep the fruit closer to the salad bar and kind of in a different area, and we were able to increase our fresh fruit consumption at this particular dining hall in one academic year by 30%. And those are the kind of things that we're looking for as far as our targets in some of the other areas as well. And with that, I'm going to ask Nancy Lewandowski to come up and give her presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Whoa, a little lower, there you go. For ISU dining, healthful dining really means being mindful about what you put in your mouth. And we really talk about that with our students a great deal. A little bit about our campus. We have 30,000 students, of which 6,800 are on meal plans, and of that, 3,000 are actually voluntary on top of it. So we do have 23 operations and then 8 chefs on campus. And our executive chef has just moved on to Vermont. So for those of you looking, come talk to me later. But our chefs do work in catering, retail, and residential. So one of the areas that we have focused on is being fresh. And so we have worked at our Farm to ISU program. As you can see, it started in 2007, and we are at 900,000 of our purchases in local products. And we continue to grow that, and we have about 40 farmers that we work with. The thing that I would like to share really about that the most is that local for us really equates into being fresh. It means less processed. It tends to be less sodium and have a lot more natural sugars. And so we use a lot of herbs and things like that we get from these farmers. And it really speaks to craveability. And one of the perfect examples of that was when we put apples from a local farmer out. He, number one, came and asked us, "What are you doing with all these apples?" And so one day I stood in the dining hall and I watched, and the students used to take an apple. We allow them to take a piece of fruit out. It's one of our ways to getting students to eat more fruit. And they were actually taking 2 or 3, and you know what? We don't stop them. We're happy that they're eating it, and our farmers are happy to get the products to us. So it works both ways for us. We do a lot of sustainability, and I just put some of those up there, but what I wanted to point out was the program they really talked about was waste and waste. The students actually have been driving a lot of our training for our students because we have a high dietetics program. For training those. And so the waste program was don't waste the food, and we went trayless, and then watch your waste. And so it was really a great program, and I have amazing slides and some great posters if anyone's looking for some. We do look at a stealth approach, mostly because with our dietetics program, what they want us to do is not to have people have a fear of food. They don't want food to get labeled good or bad. What they really want us to do is take the approach of eat the right portion, and then also look at other alternatives of things that you can do. So we do like yogurt is offered, and you can have that, and you can have sour cream, and then we talk about the differences between them, and we label them nutritionally so that they can make decisions. And so that's really been, we put salsa and pico de gallo out so that they can put those as sides instead of choosing heavier creams and things like that. So the other things that we do is we really speak to eating fresh and talking about that with our staff. And we do have 5 dietitians on our campus. So now we have 8 chefs and 5 dietitians. And it's not about how many you have, it's about them working together. And that has been a great opportunity for us to have them do that. They work in menus. They also work in the areas of really looking at what are we offering, what's new and innovative, which is where our chefs come in a great deal. Does anyone know what an Iowa martini is? I have a prize if someone knows what an Iowa martini is. No, you don't. Okay. Well, let me tell you what an Iowa martini is. In trying to put together some local and to try to put more legumes in our program, what we do is we actually take edamame and we put it in a martini shaker. We mix it with ponzu sauce. We shake it, we pour it into a martini glass, and we serve that as an appetizer for folks. And that really is taking our local right to it, because soybeans and corn is really what Iowa is about tremendously. So it's a really fun thing for us to do. But so think about that in your areas. What's something that's real local that people would be interested in? Nutrition, obviously for us, because of our dietetics program, this is a big part of what we'll be looking at is the new My Plate program. And really what we're going to be focusing on is, enjoying food by eating less of it. And our trayless program and other things have helped us do that. Avoid oversizing our portions. We try to do that. Not so much by putting it on a portioned plate for them, but we put the sample plates up so that they can see that. At least half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables. We make sure that half of our dining room is fruits and vegetables. And then we look at different grains. And I wanted to tell you a cute story again. Those of you, because you're all chefs, we put quinoa, a salad we made with quinoa on our salad bar. And our chef wrote the recipe, put it in the computer. It came up. Everyone went to go do the event. And what happened is they took the package of quinoa, they read the recipe, it said add quinoa, and they added the raw quinoa to the salad. Now, normally that wouldn't be a problem, except I'm probably the only one who had ever eaten quinoa other than the chefs, and I happened to walk into the dining hall that day and got the salad, and it looked odd, picked it up, looked at the menu card and went, this doesn't seem quite right. Bit into it, almost lost a tooth. So again, a step for you is we do get these wonderful new things, but for us it was really, you had to take it one step further and actually read that recipe a little clearer and make sure that they cook the quinoa before they put it in the salad. Also for us, really, one of the things that we like to take a look at is just, how can we improve what we're doing? a lot of times people look at the coasts, the East and the West Coast, as kind of setting the trends, and the Midwest kind of sits there and kind of sucks it up. And if any of you saw South Park, they talked about that. And South Park said that, you know, some guy had woken up from his sleep from 10 years and they sent him to Des Moines, which is not far from where I'm at. And so one of the things that I didn't realize that till I came from California to Iowa, but what is the beauty for us when we're there is that we get to see you all on the coast do different things, and then we can take what you've learned and apply it and make it even better. And so that's part of the beauty of being in the Midwest. And then lastly, you know, kind of some of the options is really what we talk about with our folks. We want to give them options. We don't want to tell them, you know, I've been in many food service director debates where we're only going to serve this because that way we know they're only getting healthy food. Well, we try to teach them about the differences and work on the education. One of the things that I did with the salad bar is they call it Nancy's Bird Food. We have all of the different dried fruits, the nuts, and the different grains that they can play with. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people didn't know what to do with it in the beginning, but I've been there 4 years now, and they're really starting to enjoy it. And now the chefs are trying to, at the different dining halls, come up with different ideas of things that they can share that are new. We're doing duck tacos, which I think is a way to do some fun things, and then a lot more steaming and poaching. So, and I know the cranberries I did mention, it's one of the sponsors, so that's kind of a fun thing to do. But it really is about the options. And of course, being soy-based in Iowa, we do a lot of soy oils. The collaboration has probably been the key to our program. And I would share that if it wasn't for the collaboration with all of the different departments on campus, we have a culinary science program on our campus, and those students actually come in and have been doing fat reduction, sodium reduction on our food. The food science students help us figure out different ways to work with our food, and our hospitality management students work in our program. And if it wasn't for the 1,400 students that work for us and them doing their internships, a lot of the great programs that we get to do wouldn't happen. And so they've been really key. But also, we work with the wellness program on campus. We also work with the Live Healthy Iowa program, which I'd never heard of till I went to Iowa, but because we're one of the states that's almost dark black red right now, we are working on health in Iowa. And so what we do is we give a $5 redeemable coupon in our retail operations where they can come in, and with that on the back side of the coupon is some of the healthy alternatives that people can get in our operations to educate them on the things that are out there. And then we also have our own teams. So our teams actually compete, and it's about getting exercise and about getting weight loss. So it helps our employees as well, which I think is a big part of this. We talk a lot of times about the students, but some of our employees have some of a lot of health issues because of what they do and are being around food all day long. So helping them learn is also important to us. The marketing has been part of it, and trying to pull it all together and taking a look at how we do that. You know, the dietitian is a big deal, but it isn't always what everyone goes to. We have Net Nutrition on the computer that people can go online and look up their food. And we just got our app this year where they can start looking at it while they're standing in front of the food, even though a lot of the things already are labeled, and we've been doing that for years. But what I wanted to show was some of the marketing that we've done. Size Nutrition, obviously we are the Cyclones. And so one of the things that we use is that to share this with people. And so this is when the My Pyramid came out. And then the lighter latte is one thing that we did that really tried to show people some different things. And then our Net Nutrition has been really something that we've been sharing with everyone. And of course, portion is big. And then I love this little retro poster. It's at every one of our registers so that people know as they come up. But it's amazing, everyone flashes back, especially some of the professors, to their high school days, and when they see the picture of this woman, it's amazing. But it really is a great little program for us, and I have a great marketing department that comes up with creative ideas, and I'm really looking forward to what the students are going to bring to us with the My Plate. Also looking at Meatless Mondays, one of the things that I wasn't sure in Iowa, I thought maybe they might find me strung up a flagpole if I went meatless. But someone shared that you can be Meatless Monday and just feature the meatless items and not have to get rid of the meat. So I think we're going to try that this next year. It'll be pretty fun. So that was a good news for me to find out. So just kind of takeaways about us. One of the things that I've had to learn is that you can't be everything to everyone. So part of it is just kind of listen to what their questions are, educate a little bit, and then work on. The thing that we try to focus on is, it's one step at a time. We are not going to convert every one of these students right away. And so it's just who can we help and who is interested first, and then we start moving into the stealth approach with other folks. And then make it fun for them and you. If you're not having a good time, and we do a lot of our nutritional programs, putting the jars out. One of the, who's it that did the gentleman from Kraft, I did the sugar yesterday, I believe it was, wasn't it? That was amazing. I can't wait to go back and do that with our students, because if you can make it fun, it will make all the difference. And I did hear about the pledges, so I think we'll be doing some of that. But that's kind of what we are in a nutshell. I'm going to pass it on to Eric Montella, from the Executive Director of Stanford Dining.
All right, great. Can everybody see me okay? I'm guessing this is the group that doesn't have cars? It's good to be here, though. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to kind of put Stanford into context as well, so you get some sense of our program. Also, I'm a CIA grad, 89, so I don't know, are there any other CIA grads here? All right. All right, very good. So our program is very culinary focused, and you're going to see that I tried to also capture some of the pictures of the different food that we're presenting. But if you look at us, our vision, of course, is to be the best in the industry, and so we take that seriously in every level of what we do. We're committed to excellence, and that shows up throughout our program. We have basically, it's a little challenging to say. So we're a residential education campus. So I think in context, when you look at Stanford, we have 4,000 students on the meal plan, but we have 10 dining halls for them, and they range in size anywhere from 65 students all the way up to about 800. We also serve from 7:30 in the morning till 2 a.m., 7 days a week. You think of Stanford as an academic campus. It's also a tremendous athletic program. As you see, we've had the #1 athletic program in the nation for 16 years, and that is all of our swimming programs. We have a lot of student athletes that are on campus, so we have to think about that in context of what the food we produce. We also have an executive dining program, and I'm going to show you some photos of that. That currently is rated #1 in the world, so we compete on a worldwide basis. Just to give you some facts, we're about 12,000 meals a day, but the metric that we're really looking at is the 200 million meals of our current students that they will eat over their lifetime. So how do we influence that behavior and affect change with them? Our campus is the second largest in the world, second to University of Moscow. We're almost 9,000 acres, so our dining halls are spread across the campus. So we have to have places for students to eat, not only in the dining halls, but also centrally where they are in the main part of the quad where their classes are. Our meal plan is also transportable to those hospitality and cafes and restaurants. These are just some of the awards. Again, we're a very culinary-based organization. My associate director is also a chef. We have a lot of chefs that are in leadership positions within Stanford. So we're essentially an all-you-care-to-eat organization, so we have to think about that in context of students coming in. What do those portion sizes look? How do we put combinations of food together? Do we put sauces? Do we put vegetables? Do we put it with protein on the plate? Because we know that students have a lot of choice. And like I said, we also feed them in a row house environment, so that's like, when you think about eating at Stanford, it's like eating in your home. So students come to eat with us, they're still in their pajamas many times. So we have to think about how do they eat in that home environment. We want to make sure that the community building happens at their tables. So they can sit down, they can have interdisciplinary discussions, they can learn from each other. We're all about focusing in alignment to the academic mission of the university. So if you think about the process for us is we tend to look at our program in ways of how are we educating students? How do we bring faculty discussions into our dining halls? And so how do we follow in alignment with the university mission? Partnerships a lot with student groups. These are some of our student gardens that are at each of the dining halls. There's a garden at each one of them. And so we work with students on a lot of different programs. Our wellness program, and I tend to use the word wellness a little bit more, our wellness program is under the brand of Eat Well. And so for us, of course, we're in the salad bowl of the nation. So there are some things that are much easier for us to get, obviously, from produce. But imagine we don't have a lot of ranches out there. So other things are more difficult. We still serve, though, grass-fed beef to our students. All of our hamburger patties, most of our beef is grass-fed. And so we work on a coordinated effort to make sure that our food is fresh. Our menus are in season. That's a really critical component, because eating nutritionally, eating food at the peak of their flavor, their ripeness, and also at the highest level of nutrition. And then sustainability obviously plays into that as well. Elaine McGee is our wellness and performance nutritionist. She works very closely actually with our culinary team. She interacts with students. She puts on events that are mindful eating seminars. So slowing down, how many of you eat in front of a computer or at your desk? But it's actually slowing down a little bit and enjoying the food. So it's okay to eat food that is, maybe you think is not necessarily healthy, but eat those in the right quantity. Slow down on your eating. It takes 20 minutes for your body to recognize even that you've eaten. So you need to think about that. We try to encourage students that way. We don't want to see students eating too much in front of laptops. We want to make sure they're community building, they're eating correctly. We have also, so Elaine communicates through a weekly blog, also through our Facebook, so she's communicating that way, as well as meeting with students. And then we do a lot of interdisciplinary task force. And in this example would be a food and body consortium issue that we're working really more with the staff, the 12,000 staff of the university, to help them with eating healthy. These are just some of the events that we do with our community, making sure that we also teach. I think the one that's the most important is on the bottom. So it's teaching the underserved community how to eat healthy. So we actually bring in, and this is a partnership with, and you say tennis and tutoring, but these are actually students who are doing the tutoring. We bring them in, we have cooking classes for them. We show how to cook in a healthy way that is inexpensive as well, that's not too time consuming. So simple steps. And our chefs are the ones who are leading those discussions. Here's some of the special events. We have lots of special events at Stanford, both bringing in chefs. Gerald Hirigoyen is a boss chef, actually brought him in. And what does that also do? The person you see on the left there is our provost. So it also helps the provost kind of understand what our programs are. We have Charlie Ayers, he's Google's first chef. We bring him in for special events using sustainable, healthy dining techniques. Or the item that you see on your left there is a picadillo that we had for one of our events. So we're using the quinoa, we're using fresh vegetables in there with a homemade tortilla on there as well. We also are cooking for one of our special events, soufflés made to order. So again, you can eat dessert, but they're in small ramekins. We cook them to order. This is an example of passion fruit souffle that we did, 4,000 of them actually, for Valentine's Day. Again, coordination through our sustainability team. Matt Roth here, he got his MBA at Stanford as well. And so we're about education. He spends a lot of his time in the classroom talking to students about sustainability. What are we doing in dining? How does that relate to, again, that we're using foods that are at the peak of their flavor, their seasonality? And this just gives you some examples of the different schools that we work with. The D School is a design and development, a thought school on how to think about making decisions critically. Now we're working actually on a different end than what David was talking on protein, which is consuming actually less meat. So our new dining hall is actually structured around, you come through, well, we're not calling it a salad bar, we're calling it a performance bar, but you come through that. You come through the vegan station, you come through the vegetarian station, because many of our students will eat vegan and vegetarian food, by the way, if you as chefs produce food that is very high quality and tasty, looks good, because students eat with their eyes. And so our culinary team actually does it. So the idea is that students come in, they make these healthy choices first, then they go and they get the piece of rotisserie chicken, or they add the grilled salmon on top of it. But they go through the structure that way. And those are just some of the other classes that we actually work with on the campus. For us, and again, from a produce side, this is much easier. 150 miles is what we say is our target range for local produce. But all the organics that you see is actually a land-based grant program. There's an educational piece. This is teaching minority farmers how to have an organic minority farm as well, how to be sustainable from that practice. We want to make sure that we support those initiatives. We're also focused on seafood. Seafood is very challenging for us with the collapse of the California salmon. We actually buy from Alaska now. We have been buying 10,000. We're actually going to increase that to 15,000. Very good for students to eat more seafood. You know that's part of the initiative as well, is to increase the amount of seafood that students are eating. And there you go. Those are the folks that we're buying, Heather Hardcastle and her family, that we buy direct from their fishery in Alaska. And then now you're going to take it up a level. So this is our executive dining program. We're all about wellness. We're all about sustainability with these groups as well. We don't compete on just a national level. We actually compete internationally with all the business schools. And you see the last 5 out of the last 6 years, Schwab has been ranked #1 in the world. And so obviously that's a very high quality level of service that they have. We also like to export that brand, so we do executive level catering for the night management center that was just built on the campus. These are actual plates that we would typically serve. And then we put a street cart together, and so this is really what we call the refined street cart in the new night management center. So those are some examples, either braised beef, short rib with rendang curry. This idea of really a refined level of what you would typically think of a cart, or chicken shawarma and things like that. So that's out of our team. It's all reflective, though, of what our culinary standards are. So these are our top 20 standards. If you want them, I can send them to you, or I'm sure these PowerPoints will be available as well. So thank you. I'm going to now introduce David May, who's the Assistant Vice President of Business Affairs from the University of New Hampshire.
Glad my friend is here because we've been having technical challenges because we go from Macs to PCs and such. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity of Ken inviting me and my esteemed colleagues, and it's always nice to be with John Juan. So don't give me a hard time. All right, I'm not gonna really talk about UNH, but I'm gonna talk about kind of 4 things today, and one is Healthy UNH, which is a collaboration for the entire campus. Talk a little bit about nutrition content and our philosophy, and our philosophy is variety of choices, education, and engagement. I'm also going to talk about the nutrition guidance via Guiding Stars program and our National Nutrition Month, which really featured a lot of daily engagement with our students. So Healthy UNH came right from the top. Our president said, we will be the healthiest campus community in the country by 2020. And so they have a whole department. It's grant funded, and they're working on all kinds of initiatives, and certainly we're part of the partnership. So I'm going to show you just a real small little clip about this.
By now, it's likely that you've seen some reference to Healthy UNH. Maybe you saw a poster hanging in your department or a water bottle at the gym. Healthy UNH is a new initiative working to make UNH the healthiest campus community in the country by 2020. That's a big challenge for us all, but we can do it. By improving our health and decreasing healthcare costs, we can become the healthiest campus community in the country by 2020. Nutrition professionals recommend that we strive to eat 9 servings of fruits and vegetables daily. Reach for low-fat dairy and lean cuts of meat, switch to whole grains, and choose healthy fats. UNH is one of the first schools in the nation to partner with Guiding Stars to enhance nutritional labeling and encourage healthier eating. The Guiding Stars nutrition rating system in dining halls and retail locations can help us all make healthier food selections.
Okay, so with this Healthy UNH, we've got like 4 examples of how our department is kind of partnered with Healthy UNH. And one is some seminars that our dietitian and a dietitian for health services, one of them was this Mindless Eating Works for You. And so we've put together these video conferences, and basically you can go online and look at them. You don't have to be there. You know, they're there as a resource. Chef videos, demos of healthy eating. Chef Kokenar will be here the next, I think, Thursday and Friday this week, and you can chat with him a little more. But we actually created some videos for students to teach them how to make healthy meals, from taking a chicken, boning it out, and using the parts of it to create a chicken stew, a quesadilla, and a healthy lunch to go. This was an interesting thing that we did. I oversee the vending program, and you know, we look to see, okay, does product placement boost healthier items, the sale of those? And we found that if they're there, students will buy them. And if they're placed right, and basically what we did was we did control machines in like dormitories with the same number of students living. And in the one with the healthy options, with 2 healthy options in each row, increased the buying of healthy vending items 2 to 1, versus a control that had just random placed foods. So vending, you know, you can impact students eating healthy choices by the way you place it in there. And then we have some, basically some guides to let people know where our operations are, and then, you know, some sample grab-and-go options that are healthy, and some of the offerings in the dining halls, and those are all cards that the students can get. From a nutritional content perspective, we have our website, and you know, that's you know, I believe Rochelle Italian, who helped me put this together, we actually were ahead of the My Plate piece, and she had created this a while ago, and I don't know, she is connected, so maybe she knew ahead of time, but and then there's, you know, every item that we have on the line has a nutritional card, so that the students can see what they're eating, and we believe that everything should be labeled at the point of selection. And then that's a picture of a hydration station that we put in, and actually, probably not to Coke's liking, but we took a Coke machine out and put a hydration station in its place to try to cut down on the sugars. We're also trying to impact the eating environment, and by doing that, we've switched down to like bite-sized desserts. And actually, campus-wide, by doing your like brownies, your bars in bite-size versus the old traditional, we're using 4 pans less a day across campus, and so 32 weeks, that's a lot of brownies. We also put smaller bowls. We reduced the size of the portions. We've bought smaller wraps. We're just about to institute a smaller bagel, and we're really working hard to eliminate added sugars, and there's an example of the applesauce there. We also created a mobile website for menus with Food Pro, so that students could actually get online and with their browser and find you know, today's menu and see what the selections are, what the nutritional content is for the day. And then Guiding Stars. We went with Guiding Stars, a third party that rates nutritional density per 100 calories as a standardization, and basically every food is rated, and there's 0 to 3 stars, good, better, and best. And we really have kind of set a goal that we'll have a Guiding Star selection at every station, at every meal. Our National Nutrition Month, we placed 3rd in the nation for NACUFs, so we're very proud of that. And basically the premise was daily engagement, samplings, and learn to make. So it was all kind of education pieces to try to get the students to learn how to make healthy food, try healthy food, eat some things that they maybe normally wouldn't think about. And that's it. And in closing, that's our websites if you're interested for Healthy UNH, our dining program, and our nutrition website. So thank you.
Alan, the idea here is that if you listen to these 4 presentations, how many people think they sounded kind of the same? Just a lot of similarities, because everybody has a website with nutritional data. Everybody's trying to do things to, what we want to explore now is what some of the differences are. So let's just start. We're going to try to keep this interactive here, but there's all these nutritional concerns. What's the top one on your campus that you would say is the top single concern if you could only address one thing, and what are you doing to address it? And I'm going to ask Eric, you first.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. So at Stanford, our issue is not, typically what you think of or you hear about university dining freshman 15. That's not an issue at Stanford. These are overachievers. These are a lot of student athletes. It's actually eating disorders. That is the thing that we focus. So what David was showing, the nutritional information at the station, we would never do this. And so it is something that would be very concerning for our student, and I'm specifically talking about a Stanford student. So for our students, we don't want them to focus on calorie counting. We actually stay away from that. We focus a lot on thinking about food for what it does for your body. So what are combinations of food? How does food synergy work? And really addressing it from that standpoint.
Okay, so if you only wanted to do one thing, you'd be doing programs that help people
educate students about how food combinations work together for them. And we actually have a program, and I don't know if I have time to talk about it. We have a program that we're working on.
All right, and there's time later to ask about those. Nancy, what would you pick?
For us, it's really about portioning, about what's the right amount to put on the plate. And so the plate program is going to be really big for us. In the past, what we've done is spent time trying to give them tools, like your fist is about a cup, and a tennis ball is this, and a golf ball is that, to try to give them an idea of what they should be taking, versus coming in, what a lot of our students came from the farm originally, and so they would come in and they would take probably about 12 to 15 chicken strips, because it's self-service in a lot of our facilities. We've started portioning onto plates, putting a vegetable in a starch and making a meal for them so that they see the right portions and start experiencing that. We still have one where you can go grab what you want, but we do put a portion plate near that space for them to see, and then we do have the portion cards, just like UNH.
And David May?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're working hard at is, essentially this national epidemic of chronic disease and, is it on? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. The epidemic of diet-related diseases and such, we're working with just a ton of students. And because we're a residential campus where the meal plan is required, I kind of set a standard that we will not let anybody off the meal plan. And so we've got to work really hard to meet needs of just what seems to be an awful lot of students that have these food allergies and, the celiac sprue, obesity, type 2 diabetes and such. So that's a big challenge for us right now.
Okay, now, if you were to achieve your goal, how would you measure that you had achieved it? What kind of measurements are you trying to do? And let's start with David Riddle. David, I never got to you, did I? What's your
I'm glad
biggest
to
deal?
throw one in there for you.
Go ahead.
I think for us, given the slides that I presented, I think we're particularly concerned about the kind of epidemic of obesity in this country. So overconsumption of low-quality carbohydrates, I think, is really one of our areas of focus. And one of the ways we're trying to address that, I think, is redesigning. We run a bake shop in-house, so that gives us a lot of control over our baked products. And right now, about 80% of what we serve on campus, we bake on campus. So I think transitioning to whole grains as much as we can, whole wheat as much as we can, try to improve the quality of that, and also steer them in the direction of alternatives besides sodas, I think is an important one.
Okay.
And to the measure question,
Yeah.
I think for us, we've tried to set some targets for consumption for fruits and vegetables and increasing it. So specifically in our dining halls, we took a benchmark. We said, this is where we're at now. Where do we want to be? How are we going to go about increasing the consumption? And we measure that through purchases. And there's a fairly good correlation between what we buy and what's consumed. But that's the specific way we're measuring that target.
As per student?
Overall purchases for a dining hall, we'll set targets on. We want to increase our produce purchases by X amount, or our fresh fruit purchases by X amount.
But volume, not dollars, and volume per student, or?
I think a dollar purchase is the easiest way that we've found to measure it. It's a little hard to measure in an all-you-can-eat setting, what the individual consumption rates are.
Okay, Nancy?
We've been looking at how many portions we go through versus accounts that come in, and is one of the ways that we're talking about. But we defer actually out to our dietetics programs on campus, and what we're going to do is work with them this next few years. They actually want to study more about the freshman 15 and is it changing, but we're going to have them work with us on how they're doing their research, and then have them also measure for us. We're not really sure how to attack it. We figure that's what they do, so we're going to have them help us do that.
Okay, David May?
That's a tough one. I still continue to struggle with how we can measure that. Hopefully, at the end of a 4-year period of students being at UNH, they've learned some things. So I think I'd like to try to figure out a way to monitor that, and if they really do take the behaviors beyond the 4 years at school.
Yeah, and Eric?
Yeah, I would just say, I agree with you, David. I think, if you think in context of some of these measurements for a class discussion, well, or residential education, these are softer measurements. There is not such strong metrics. We could certainly look at our produce consumption, and actually for us, the number one produce item that is consumed is pineapple. So that's our highest velocity item. And we feel good about that in some ways. But what does that mean? What does that tell me? Does that tell me students are eating more or not? I also look at attendance in some of the classes, some of the curriculum that we have with our nutritionists. So what is the student interest? How many students are participating in those kind of discussions? As we have Nutrition Month programs, let's say we have a rate the plates, where we do you get certain kinds of colors on your plate, and we actually rate you. And so we have students actually do that. So last year we had 900 students. The year before we had 700. So we would look at that and say, okay, more students are interested in this. It's an opportunity to educate them. But again, I go back to it's very hard to measure. Our goal is about education. We want to look at behaviors beyond Stanford. Did we influence students? But go back to my metric of 200 million meals. So we think about that. Are we influencing their meals to the future, and do we change their behavior towards the future?
Sure. For the chefs in the room, now we have one kind of person on the stage here. These are people who look at the program overall. Chefs, typically somehow or other, you're reporting to people like this. I've always thought that one of the most important things is how do you get in the mind of your boss or your boss's boss. So let me ask the people here on the panel, what expectations do you have for the role of chefs in your programs in trying to meet your larger goals for healthier meals, nutrition education, all that sort of stuff? And let me start with you, Eric, on that one.
Okay, and you see some of the pictures of what we do. So I look at chefs and say, you are our creative outlet. So I have expectations that when we put a concept up there, let's say this is an overarching umbrella of ideas that we have. The chefs are going to translate that into very high quality food, produced just in time for the students, and consistently, day to day, because 12,000 meals a day, but it's served, one meal at a time. So we have to think about how does that student eat that food. I look at chefs as the gatekeepers of quality of our food program. So it's very important to me. My background both as a chef, but also how I think about chefs in this industry. And I was having this conversation earlier, which is, the thing to guard, especially for new chefs coming into this environment, is not to become complacent. Not to sit year over year and say, well, my staff are challenging, and this person called out sick or something like that. But keep that very same standard that you came in here with, keep it very high, and stick with it. And so because you're the gatekeepers. And I think that role is really critical in what we do. We're not car manufacturing, we're in food production. And I can't say enough good things about our chefs.
Okay, who else wants to jump in on that? What are your expectations for chefs? Who wants to go?
I'd say I absolutely expect them to be advocates for health and nutrition. The artistry piece is always expected and there, but I think it's certainly changed over the last few years, and there's a definite expectation that they embrace our nutritional goals and see them through.
Let me just query that though. When you say be an advocate, I mean, what role? I mean, what activities does advocacy mean for a chef?
I think it means driving innovation. I don't expect my dietitian to tell them what to cook. I expect there to be some guidelines that we've established as a program, but then really I want to see the chefs use their artistry to embrace those guidelines and come up and bring new ideas and introduce new concepts to us instead of us or the registered dietitian, kind of twisting their arm into trying this or trying that.
Okay.
So that's what I think of when I think of advocacy, is someone who's proactive in coming up with ways in which to deliver higher quality nutrition that also will educate and excite the customer.
Anyone want to add to that?
It tastes good. I think I would agree that I really see our chefs as the innovators, but they're also the ones who help us get our staff to be able to do these things so that it isn't all completely dependent on them. So they help us take that opportunity to teach our folks on how to do these different things, why it is important, because they do need to understand that. It isn't just about, you're going to do this because I said, it's about why this is important and helping our staff understand that, and then they can share that with our students as well. And then our chefs go out and actually do the cooking demonstrations for the community, for the campus, and for staff, and I think that's another opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, and just quickly, engagement is like getting in, meeting with the peeps, out there talking with the students, and talking about how things are prepared, why we do things the way we do, and also work in concert with the dietitian to make sure that what we're doing is really healthy. And that's kind of the charge I have, the Chef Coconut.
Sure. And let me just add a thought, listening to this. When a chef tells a student something about nutrition and flavor in a meal, that's an entirely different message than the same exact message coming from a dietitian. Especially today with all the attention on culinary technique on television and the media, you have a powerful voice, much more powerful than someone who's there trying to tell you how to eat well. So I think when you talk about being a chef advocate, that's something to keep in mind. Moving on to dietitians, and I'm going to start with Nancy on this, I think, because Nancy, you've got 5 dietitians to every one of theirs. You outnumber all of them together. And she told me earlier that her school is pumping dietitians out, so there's lots of employment for them out there.
Well, the role for us with the dietitians is really, there's some that are in operations, there's one that's in purchasing. So she's looking at what it is that we're getting, because it's a full part. You have to look at all the avenues. One's in the commissary, and so she's making sure that the products that are going out are labeled appropriately and that we're getting all the information, and the items that we're creating in that commissary come out that way. Another one is in menu management and works with all of the menu cycles for the residential and works with them. And then we have our dietitian that actually works with the students with different dietary needs, those that have celiac and have peanut allergies, and then works through the program with them and how we can take care of them and make the foods that they need so that we can take care of them in a home environment, and the parents can relax and the student can focus on school. We also use the students in the internship programs to actually do our education in the dining halls and in the retail operations, and they go out and teach programs. So they help us keep our finger on the pulse of what's really important to them, and also what's happening out in the programs that are being taught to the new dietitians for next year. So that is the way we use our dietitians, and then how they tie in with our chef is they take a look at the menus and the innovative ideas, and then look at what that calorie count is. And I can tell you, we've sat in conversations before talking about, is fried green beans, if you've batter fried it and fried it, is that a carbohydrate or is that a vegetable? And I'm going, what? Not my forte. That's what they get to work through, but they really look at how to balance that plate together with a chef and help them get a program that can work too.
Yeah. Before we move on, let me just say what I would like you to try to address is the two working together. Let me just go back to yesterday. We had a presentation, and I forget the chef on stage mentioned it, but my question was, well, what kind of a glycemic index does that that dish have? He says, I have no idea, I'm not a dietitian. But I don't think that's going to be a good answer in the future for a lot of things. If you were at that seminar, David, that we were at, Dr. Ludwig talked quite a bit about the issues of glycemic index and how once it's in the body, all these common foods are really no different than sugar once they're ingested, and for a lot of reasons, particularly for diabetes, that's a real issue for the future, and it's going to affect, like in the school program, whether they serve starchy vegetables and things like that. Those kids are coming to you soon. So talk about how the chefs and dietitians can work together, because if I was doing a demo today and I was coming to a conference, I think I'd want to know a little bit more about, in case there was a nutritional question about the dish I prepared. You don't have to be a dietitian to analyze it, but what would you want to know? So talk about what you expect from them working together. You can finish that. Go ahead.
For us, they actually meet weekly and review recipes together and talk about what's working, what's not working, and the impact of them. They pull the nutritional information out and talk about it. They talk about what's working on the menu. So there is a conversation that goes on between them every week where they sit down and they just pick different areas to talk about.
Do they yell much?
No. In the old days, I remember they did. They actually were on two sides of the spectrum in the old days, but I don't see that anymore. I see them working as a team, and it really is a benefit to the two of them to be able to make our students healthy.
David, Megan,
Yeah, you know, they absolutely work together in tandem. And, you know, I kind of think of during orientation, you know, we're in the middle of it right now, and so these parents and students with these food allergies and food chronic diseases and such come, and the two of them meet with the parents and the student, and they kind of tag team it. And Ralph will take the student on a tour of the dining hall, down in the kitchen, so that they can see how foods are prepared. Rochelle talks about how to navigate around the dining hall. So they work really well together, and the measure of success is after the visit, 9 times out of 10 we get an email from the parents thanking us for the time we took and how comfortable they are about coming to UNH. And in fact, you know, in the last 5 years, I probably have had 7 or 8 parents tell me that the reason they're coming to UNH is because they feel that their son or daughter will be able to navigate the dining program and stay safe. So it's really important to get out there and work. They work together. You know, I think my dietitian challenges the chefs on methods, and they look at, you know, choosing more foods that are healthy. Of course, they got the pushback that that's too expensive and we have to negotiate back and forth and such, but they work really well together.
Chefs and dietitians working together. David Riddle.
Yeah, I think it's a good collaborative professional working relationship. I think over the last several years, chefs have I think the relationship has evolved, and it's not as, there's not the animosity perhaps that used to be there for 2 reasons. One, I think chefs realize that there is this nutritional outcome that we need to focus on based on some of the health issues that we've got in this country. And I think dietitians realize now finally that it's only good if people show up and eat it. And so I think that creates some mutual respect, and that's resulting in, I think, really productive relationships between the chefs who are responsible for recipe development and production, and the dietitians who are responsible for overall nutritional outcome. So what I see happening is I see really the role of our dietitian as a consultant for the chef, and we can try to keep that as the relationship.
Is that the way it works at Stanford?
So I still would say there is tension between dietitians and chefs. And you know, you just think about it because a registered dietitian is very analytical. There's a lot of structure that's associated with these principles. Now you're going to take the chef and you're going to say this is creative, this is artistic, this is all of the other things that tend to not work always so well under a rigid structure. I was at a culinary conference where a chef made some comments about dietitians not knowing how to cook. Well, I wouldn't agree with that. I actually know Elaine very well, knows how to cook. She produces a lot of things for us. The way it works at Stanford, we wouldn't really, because we're a lot about collaboration. So the best example I can use is a performance dining initiative we're working on. So Elaine actually leads this. It is a partnership collaboration that we'll be launching this fall with School of Medicine, Stanford Athletics, and Culinary Institute of America. And we're really focusing on certain key topics, again, going back to foods.
There's a lot of pride that goes on. They get their picture taken and they get prizes, but the bigger part is the bragging rights for the whole next year until the Iron Chef happens again next January. And I have to tell you, the first time they did it, I was one of the judges, and they made me cry. Because so many times we say, follow the recipe, do what it says, and we don't let them be creative. And I learned a lot that day from our team and what the executive chef did with our team. And I think that that's what we need to do more of, is allow them a little bit of freedom to share in that recipe part, and to get the chef to bring that back to the team, to the dietitians, and then to build the program. So I see them as the innovator, I see them as the trainer, and really making the whole program come together.
Just on tack on that, how many people here have dietitians back at their schools? Raise your hands. How many have got a couple of ideas they're going to take back to discuss with those dietitians? Do you know what they are now? How about that tofu egg salad? Pretty good? I thought it looked pretty good. Who else wants to jump in on this?
Yeah, so I think part of our role as directors is to encourage that educational process for our staff, to provide these kind of training opportunities either here or at other times. And I hope that the other part of that, though, is that you take this back to your campus. And so that's really a critical role, that you become the champion of healthy eating as you learn a little bit more. And I think the challenging thing about food science or healthy eating is it changes all the time on us, right? Oh, butter was good for us, butter's not good for us. Margarine's good, margarine's not so good. And so it's food science, it changes. And so you have to learn and evolve with those changes. It's just like culinary techniques. They evolve, they change, those trends change. You have to keep up with it. But your role, I would see, is to take what you have learned and put that into practice actually as quickly as possible. The faster you do that, it becomes then a habit, it becomes the culture of your organization. So where that then is ingrained, your role is to champion back on your campus. You have a responsibility to do that. We have a responsibility to provide these kind of opportunities for you to go out and learn and be exposed to the latest in food science with the culinary techniques that go with it.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to see if you have some questions. Health versus wellness. Is there a distinction in reality, and in terms of marketing effectiveness, and in terms of communicating your program to your student customers and other customers? Who wants to take a shot at it?
Well, healthy food tastes bad. Most people think of healthy, and if you say, oh, this is healthy, then you think, well, that's not going to taste very good. And so we've made a conscious effort to try to stay away from that. You can see our higher brand is the Eat Well brand. That actually lands in with a whole campus initiative around Be Well. And so that's obviously a linkage. Again, I said we try to tie into the global efforts of the university. But typically, if you think about healthy, no one thinks about healthy food is delicious. And so I think from a brand marketing strategy, wellness is something that is thought of, and we're trying to think about wellness from a more holistic mind, body, and spirit. All of these things linked together.
Go ahead, Nancy. Just agreeing, or you want to?
Well, I was agreeing. It is, to me, wellness is about mind, body, spirit, and health is about the body, and you're working on it from that perspective. So I see wellness as the whole big picture, and I agree completely with what you're saying.
We think of wellness as the practice and health as the outcome. So, wellness is the behavior, and health is the measure.
Wellness is a cultural, almost a philosophical approach to lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. David, you agree? All right, questions in the audience. We have a few more here, but anybody here have a question? Yes, over here.
So I was really interested. My name is Kathy Egan. I'm a dietitian.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know.
There's a mole in the audience.
All right. I'm also a food service director, so I've been on both sides. I'm really curious about the stealth health, and kind of like, okay, so that's one approach, but why should healthy be a bad word? And so how do you balance out, okay, we do actually want to have an impact on what they actually consume, but what about changing the mind, changing the attitudes about, you know, what's wrong with eating healthy food, and also the nutrition education point of it. If we're going to take a stealth health approach, then are you cheating them on nutrition education and teaching them about what's in the food that they're eating?
Anybody want to answer that?
I'll go for it. The stealth health that we work through is in the dining room where we will give the information. And so what we're doing is sharing the information. Our dietitians in their educational programs will teach them about what's good and what's bad, but they have to approach that, they have to do with what their doctor says. There's a lot of other impacts, and what we don't want to do is curb them from eating something that's healthy because they think it's not going to taste good. So we want to give them the opportunity to try the different things, and I think there's opportunities to do that, but I do think that if we label it, we will get into trouble. I was in California for many years, and when you tell them certain things to eat, or this has got too much fat, they will not eat it because you told them that. But the concern is that they will stop eating it and not understanding that it's mindful eating, it's about portioning, it's about the balance. And so it's not that there's good food, bad food, it's that there are lots of choices out there, and you need to make wiser choices. And this is the dietetics program that makes us do this on our campus. They said that they do not want us teaching that there's good food, bad food. They're the ones that have made us not do stealth, made us do stealth, and to look at it from mindful eating.
Right, and just, I think the whole idea behind this My Plate, which, you know, it's getting a certain amount of support, a certain amount of, well, that's silly, but, you know, I was listening to Janie Thornton, Kevin, you heard Janie, but she said this to me several times. She's the USDA Undersecretary for Health and, let's see, School Food Nutrition Services, so it's schools, but other things too. She says, you know, the problem with the pyramid was no one gets to dinner and goes, geez, I haven't had enough B12 today. You need to have some way of communicating, you know, what is the right amount of food. And you know, this idea of who had the plate up there made of the, was that your David's with the clock with the food, kind of the way that My Plate looks? You know, diabetes educators have been using that sort of an image for a long time, and no one wants to say that's where it came from, but we need to change our perception of what should a plate look like when it's filled with food. And I know I was talking to Chef Frank out here this morning, Frank Ferno, yeah, and he said, you know, the ACF judges don't want to see these huge portions on the plate, they want to see a balanced plate. And so even, you know, when you go to a culinary competition, there's a look for more of a balance. What does a balanced meal look like? So I think part of the answer to your question is, it's not that we do have to communicate it, but maybe the answer, as Eric says, is not to put a nutritional analysis on every single plate or every single item that could go on the plate. That's not necessarily it. It's to say, what does a plate look like that might include that, and what does that visually mean to people? Because people think visually, right? I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, I think it's a great question. And but we're also competing, you know, go back to your video. So however many years ago that was, we're competing against millions of dollars in marketing, and some companies are doing a wonderful job on their healthy initiatives, but then some are not. And so some are saying things that are absolutely not healthy or healthy. Some of those products, where I started, they taste bad. And so that's not what we want our students to think about is what we would call healthy eating choices. So it's also trying to mold their behaviors. They come in as freshmen, maybe they don't have such good eating habits. Think about some of the K through 12 programs they're coming from. Not so healthy, so not so nutritious. So we want to get them to encourage them to try foods that they wouldn't have tried otherwise. And to really explore also their cuisine horizon, broaden their range of what they will try. You know, they're not just going to try a red apple that looks perfect, that is a red delicious apple, and it's the same. We want them to try other kinds of apples. And you know, some organic apples don't look that great. And there's confusion about, even with organic, of, you know, organic sugar is no better than regular sugar. So these things get kind of confused for our students.
The young woman next to you, are you a dietitian too?
I'm also a dietitian.
I knew you would cluster together, that's how I guessed that. Yeah.
We hang together.
Go ahead, question.
I work as a dietitian at the health services here on campus. So
I see the students that are having problems at the dining halls, usually one way or the other way. Either they're eating too much or they're not eating enough, usually some sort of eating disorder. And the biggest thing of what we find is, they're at an unlimited buffet. And they do better, and they're able to go to more of the centers on campus that they have, like, they have a certain amount of money they can spend, and that's all they can get. And I know some colleges have systems where you pay, instead of having unlimited buffet, you pay by the weight of the food. Has any of you thought of that? Is that something that you feel might help with overconsumption and with these people that have trouble with unlimited amounts of food?
I'm going to tell you one thing I know a school did that's not represented here, but University of North Texas a few years ago, we gave them an award for this. They had a concept called Mean Greens, but it was a dining hall where you went with all your care to eat credit, but you only made one choice. You didn't have to make a whole bunch of choices when you selected your plate. When you made your choice, you went in there and you got a balanced meal and you didn't get seconds. And all the student had to say was, I'm going, and this was a big risk to put that in place because, David, you're down in Texas. There's a lot of folks that, how many people would make that choice if you were betting your career on putting in a bunch of money to build that dining hall, But it worked out very well because there are people that are concerned. And if they make a single choice and that helps them for the meal, it's better than saying I have to make 5 choices and I have 5 different temptations,
I heard a comment from a female student last semester that one of the reasons her and her friends aren't coming to one of our all-you-can-eat dining halls more often is because they don't want to get fat. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's sometimes hard to control when everything's on offer, unlimited. So I think we have to look at other strategies for how we address that through educational programs primarily. And I think representing what a balanced plate ought to look like in terms of portion sizing, if it's a self-service situation, putting out an example plate's a good approach. But we're about to start a renovation of our freshman dining hall, and we're actually going to reopen it as more of an a la carte dining hall format still, but it's sort of you pay for what you choose and not for an unlimited access type model. So we're going to run two different dining halls, all you can eat plus this a la carte, and we'll see how it goes. We'll know more in a couple of years, I think, about consumption rates.
I'd add, and I've been doing this for 32 years now, a long time. It's all about choices, and I don't think it's our role to try to get them to change their behavior, but like forcing them to change their behavior. I think our role is to engage them and educate them, provide samplings, show portioning and say, hey, this is it's trying to do the soft approach, we took a hit from our dietitians that were in health services when we decided to put all the nutritional content. They were vehemently against it. But for us, what happened was the Student Senate put a resolution out there that said, we want that information available. And when you really think it's out there anyways, it's out on our website, so why not put it in front? And they can make choices. And so you can go back and forth and say, well, this isn't good for those students that have eating disorders and such, but for them, that's getting them to start making the right choices. It makes me cringe when I look at them lining up for the chicken nuggets or the chicken strips, and I'm like, Jesus, come on. And I can't have anybody argue with me that you can't eat healthy in a dining hall. If Ken's whole program was here up and we were all around, you can eat very, very healthy here or any place. And so it's all about getting that student to make the right choices.
Yeah, I think you can. I think it's a really good question, actually. So in an all-you-care-to-eat environment, that is actually a challenge. But you can have. So how do students make decisions? You can actually have multiple strategies to go after this. One is a sustainability initiative of Trayless actually encourages eating less. Also, you can shrink your plate size. So the students, when I think of them as freshmen, they have no clue of what a portion is. So they eat at Cheesecake Factory, they eat at Claim Jumper, they eat at these places that a portion is massive. And so, or what our nutritionist did, we did a sugar demonstration for students. We showed them a Sobe green tea. Okay, how many of you drink a Sobe green tea? Great, and you think it's healthy, right? Because it's green tea. Okay, how much sugar is in that? So we looked at sugar. Oh, next point, how many portions is this? Oh, it's 2.5. So how many of you drink 1 portion out of the bottle and then leave that, and then come back at another time, and no student even thinks, they see a giant Sobe bottle and they think, I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink the whole thing. But to the point of a la carte, which is what you're talking about, a la carte dining, we actually had both systems for us. Now, I talked just about Stanford. Freshmen were horrible at managing their monopoly money. And so they were buying food for their friends, they were making all other kinds of choices, and you would think that would encourage healthy eating, and actually, we ended up with students running out of money through the quarter. And so we went to a la carte. One of the things that we did was we took away all of the staff that, and this is a financial piece, but the staff that used to serve the students, because they would tend to serve the students more food than the students wanted. And I'm a big guy, they used to see me and like, here, Eric, here you go, here's another portion for you. And I'm like, I don't want to eat that much. I really, thank you, but I don't. So we allow the students, we show them what a portion is, we allow them to serve themselves. They tend to, on a smaller plate, take smaller portions. And again, going back to the idea of the plates. Sometimes the benefit is make the whole plate for them. They're not good at putting combinations together. Give them the vegetables, give them the starches, give them the whole grains, give them a 2 or 3 ounce piece of protein. And because they have to go back in a trayless environment, you get your plate, you come over here, you're only really going to want to go back there so many times, right? And so that actually is encouraging them to take appropriate portions.
We've got a question here from Jay.
Yeah, hi, I'm with OSU, and we do the a la carte system, and it works really well. And what you just said about portion control, it is a factor. But I'm talking about just trying to do as much as farm to fork with providing local farmers. We do know, all of us as chefs, we know that cost of food is going up, and using a lot of local products does raise the price. So how do you work with your chefs on that, and what percentage of your menus that you are using local, and how are you managing those costs? Are you taking it out, raising price on students, or are you subsidizing it somewhere to kind of make it affordable to students?
We set it up that we went to the students and said, we feel that this is important. Do you feel it's important? Buying local, they did. What we shared is, if the case of tomatoes is $10, oftentimes, because it's not a commodity product, this could cost more. How much are you willing to invest in this? They gave us 2% on our food cost for the next year. So that 2% is applied. So if a case of tomatoes is $2 more to buy it from a local farmer, we put that into the pool. Now, there are times when it's less, especially when it's in high season. When we're getting it locally, we can get it a lot cheaper. But for example, when there was the floods in Florida 2 years ago, I was getting tomatoes from one of the gentlemen that was down the road that he was growing it in some hoop houses that actually allowed us to get it at about $5 to $7 less. I didn't go back and divide it, pull that $7 back out. But what I do know is that when it costs more, the students are willing to look at that. And that's how we funded it ourselves. We went to them and said, how important is it? And we had done some education prior to that. But I also get grants. I have 2 different grants that I get. One is through the Leopold Center that pays for my student to run our Farm to ISU program, and that's been huge for us. The other is I have an IDOLS grant, and the IDOLS grant is dealing with food safety. That has been the hottest button that comes up lately in Iowa about buying local and buying from the farmers. And so we are doing the GAP training, which is Good Agricultural Practices training, through our sustainable ag students with our farmers that we buy from, and offering that up to any other local farmers, because we also are the ones who started the Buy Fresh, Buy Local program, and I use another grant for that. I use the students to write the grants so that it doesn't affect our program, and it makes a huge difference in us being able to do this without the students feeling it's a big impact to them. But also I had to get their buy-in. I mean, they have to be a part of this or it's not worth the effort to do it. And so we have to do the education too, and that's where the grants come in.
If someone else wants to answer, they can, but someone else had a question back there, so get the mic back to whoever had the question there. And anybody else want to
Yeah,
jump in on
sure.
this?
So for us, 40% of all of our purchases are local and organic. So we serve 100% cage-free eggs. We serve grass-fed beef. I told you about that. We can't raise prices to students. It's set by the Board of Trustees. We have to have actually a level of affordability in our board rate. So because our students are need-line admission, so a tremendous amount of financial aid goes to students. But I use two words to chefs when it comes to that question. It's called menu engineering. So we're not buying one thing at a time and saying this is what we buy. We look at it and say this is a strategy. We want to have this initiative to buy more local items. So how do we do that? Well, then we have to look in context of what kind of menus are we running overall, how much protein are we serving, how often, what types. So you always want to elevate your program year over year. You want to be able to take on things. Sometimes that have more cost. Cage-free eggs, 100% more cost. Not 100% on top, but it's more cost. The issue of wild salmon, less cost. Why? Because through purchasing, we negotiated a deal with Heather and her family that gives us consistency of pricing throughout that season. We serve 0 farm-raised salmon. It's a commodity item. It comes in a very price. Doesn't work for us from a sustainability initiative. We actually save money by buying wild salmon. Then we said, well, what size should it be? What should a portion of the salmon be? How often should we serve it? So that's why I talk about menu engineering. You think about things in context in the relationship with each other. It takes a lot of effort actually on the culinary team, so not working with so much the dietitians, but working with procurement and purchasing, coming up with strategies. You have to think it strategically of how we're going to afford to do this over the long run. And many times local produce, bought in season, less expensive. I can buy organic many times locally at a less expensive price than I can conventional.
Okay, we had a question in the back.
Cornell, how you doing? 2 years ago, I had the luxury of having a dietitian move in to the building that I'm in. She's about maybe 100 feet away, and I'm a more mature chef. I've been around a little bit longer than some of the people that I work with. In fact, I'm the oldest guy in my kitchen. And she showed up at my office one day, and she's really this thin, perky thing that very intelligent, very pretty, and came in and started laying all these things on me about nutrition. Well, some of those I knew and some I didn't know. And she hit me with the rethink the plate. And it made a lot of sense because whenever I would go out to eat, I wouldn't break down the pyramid because I didn't have time or I didn't really want to think about it. And when she broke down the plate for me, it was easy. Half the plate, fruits and vegetables, here's my starch, here's my protein. I lost 22 pounds in about less than 2 months, just going on that idea that she gave me. So then we became friends, and I support her totally. And in the beginning, I'll have to admit that I wasn't exactly holding that door open, hoping she would come in. But she took me to school, and she told me how important it was to do things like lowering the amount of salt that we give to the students. And my goal, when I go back, and it was my goal before I came here, is to make the unit that I work in as sodium-free as I possibly can. And you talk about stealth initiative, I don't care if they know or not know. My food is going to taste good, whether it has a sodium in it or not. I'm going to fortify it with flavor. You see? And I know I can do that. And all these chefs know they can do it because they've seen it done all week long. And I'm sure these guys are talented and they know how to do this. And so that's the next step. And I'm taking that back to her. She'll enjoy that.
I'm going to direct a question to the dietetic community over here. Which one of you would like to suggest to the chefs in the room some constructive things about
Encouraging that collaboration we just heard about? Because I really do think that there's a great opportunity there. Who wants to take that on? Who wants to say so? Come on. You're part of this, right? Right?
Need a microphone? Yeah. All right.
Okay, we got a taker right over here.
Okay. Thanks. You know, I mean, really, I think it boils down to personalities. You know, you have to be willing. I think I get along great with all of the chefs that I'm working with now, and I've never had, actually, my best friend at the last place that I worked at was the chef. I've never, ever had any problem with the chef. Actually, the chef and I we're on the same page because we're both very knowledgeable about the ingredients. You know, I think that historically, yeah, the old style of cooking that was, you know, the more French traditional cooking was definitely in conflict with some of the nutrition initiatives now. But I think most chefs who are working now are pretty well informed. So I don't know. I mean, I guess my response is that I don't really see that there is a problem if people go into it with the right attitude, because we're all on the same team. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And I agree 100% with the gentleman from Cornell. You know, if it tastes good, then the kids are going to eat it. So, done deal.
Another one. Okay.
I'd like to make another point. I'm Julie Lampe. I'm the dietitian at Tufts University. I've been there 25 years. And you can see I'm amongst you. I've been at this conference for many years. I would encourage you to have your dietitians accompany you to this conference. You guys have a hard job, and I understand that, and all dietitians should understand how difficult of a job you have. And putting them behind a hot stove is the best way to get them to understand the collaboration is all about. So I encourage the comment regarding the gentleman chef from Cornell. Most of us, especially those of us who have been on the younger side, I don't include myself at this point, but I've been always open-minded. I've had always wonderful relationships working with my chefs. If I'm unreasonable, they usually say something and I think about it and I recount what I had stated. But collaboration is key, and we're all working for the same end goal, is to have our students be very enthusiastic about our food and eat well. So I encourage you, to collaborate with dietitians, and for more campuses to hire dietitians as well. Because with the whole food allergy problem growing, I know even our catering chefs, who are very well trained, once in a while they forget about a certain ingredient, and they are very happy when I bring it up, because I've kept their clientele safe, from having a reaction. So, thank you.
We're going to end this in a minute here, but I'm just going to throw out, because I operate in healthcare, it's a little different in healthcare because so many, just for example, the Association of Hospital Food Service, I think of the operator members, 42% are RDs. So it's a much different environment than, say, NACUFs, where there's a few RDs, but it's not a real predominant thing. But in the last 10 years, as more and more hospitals have really tried to upgrade their food, and they've hired executive chefs, and they've made chefs part of their management team, there's been a real change. And I would say one of the places that this could take place is when you go to a dietetic intern class, and I used to speak at one every year down at Case Western Reserve, and you'd say, where are you going to be in a couple of years? Everyone in that class almost says, I'm going to be a clinical dietitian. Well, I'm just going to tell you, there's not that many jobs for clinical dietitians today. There are not new ones opening up unless someone retires. So many of them are not going to be clinical dietitians. They'll move into management, or they'll move into some other field. They'll become consultants, which is what happens. Frankly, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea for chefs to sometimes speak to those classes and talk about the challenges that chefs face with management production on the culinary side. I don't think they get exposed to that in culinary school much at all. I mean, in dietetic school. I mean, would you guys agree with me on that? Did they teach you much about that side of things when you were there? Yeah, but I mean, cooking from a chef's point of view with flavor profiles and things like that. Right. I mean, it tends to be more, as I think Eric said, methodical, and the technical side of cooking. So here are the techniques. Here's this, and which is more. Yeah, go ahead.
There is now a practice group in the American Dietetics Association.
I know there is. And
food and culinary professionals.
There is.
It's a relatively new group, but I think that speaks to the current trend.
There is, and you can talk. I know a lot of people involved in that group actually, and what I'm saying is I think chefs need to help encourage that kind of thing, because that's how the interaction happens professionally. We're talking about new generations of people, and it's the same thing in culinary schools. You look at the CIA. When Catherine Powers helped, what's the name of the one up in Hyde Park, the healthful dining one that opened like 25 years ago? St. Andrews. Catherine Powers was intimately involved when that was put together, and she's a consultant now, working with schools primarily now, but that opened up a lot of people's eyes when they did that, and that was strictly because they brought dietitians into a traditional culinary environment and said, what can we do to work together to change the program? That's what really needs to happen in these environments, because really, no one's got all the answers, for sure.